So with 2024 most likely being Nintendo Switch 2 launch year, there's just a lot of leaks and rumors and things coming out as we get closer to the announcement for the system, and today we've got a report that came out about apparently the detailed specs for what exactly the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to be like in terms of its capabilities, and everybody's been reporting on this and sharing their thoughts, and I kind of want to share my thoughts about this as well because I'm not really sure how I feel about it. So while everyone's been making articles and videos and stuff talking about this information, I managed to find out that it comes from the Taiwanese Economic Forum, which was the original place where this was first posted, and I tried to see if there was like any other information that the Taiwanese Economic Forum had talked about before, and if they're actually like a credible source that has leaked stuff about other tech related products. I didn't manage to find any, but if you guys do know about these people or like this kind of website and what they have posted before, and if it turned out to be reliable, you can definitely let me know down below in the comments. But they basically commented on a lot of information about Nintendo this year and what it's going to be like with them launching the Nintendo Switch 2, and then also giving detailed descriptions of what exactly the system is going to be like, apparently from stuff that they've heard. And so we're going to look at all of this information, and I'm going to have it broken down into video chapters inside of this video as well, so you can click around to find out about the stuff that you're interested in. So the first thing that they talked about here is exactly when the system is going to come out with its launch date. And they don't really mention here like a specific day or even a month, but they do say here that they're expecting that the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to come out during the second half of the year in 2024, which honestly makes the most sense even in my opinion. Like, I've always thought that the system is going to come out around the holiday time of this year as well. I feel like putting the system out around like September to November, somewhere in the middle there, like right before Thanksgiving and Christmas when everybody's doing their holiday shopping, I just feel like that makes the most sense, and we've seen that with pretty much a lot of the other systems as well, like the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X. Then it also mentions that there's going to be a significantly improved battery and that we're going to be getting a massive improvement to the battery life compared to what we're getting right now on the current Nintendo Switch, which honestly I was expecting there to be an increase in the battery life with kind of just getting new hardware in general, but with the way that they're describing it here, it seems like Nintendo might have invested a lot into just making it last for a really long time with just much better battery life overall. And that might sound good, but it's really when we start taking a look at some of the other stuff that we're going to discuss later, where you might start to realize that this might not be the best idea. But now moving into the actual chip that the system is going to be using for its CPU and GPU, they mention here that it's going to be using the NVIDIA T239 chip, which is exactly the chip that has been rumored and leaked for a long time, so this isn't that surprising either. This definitely makes a lot of sense. I mean, it would be kind of surprising if it turned out to be something other than this, as this was the chip that was leaked way back in like 2021, and we've heard that Nintendo and NVIDIA have been working really closely on this chip to make it very nice for the next Nintendo system, as it's not going to be like the Tegra X1, which was a chip that was made by NVIDIA for their own tablets and other things that they later then used for the Nintendo Switch, but rather this is going to be a special chip that is designed just for Nintendo's own hardware, so it's definitely going to be much more capable. So far everything sounds pretty good, right? Well, it's really when we start taking a look at some of this other stuff where it starts to become a little bit more concerning, as the next thing that we have here is about the actual storage that the system is going to come with in terms of its memory, and the article mentions here that the system is going to come with 64 gigabytes of internal storage. Now to some people, maybe this sounds pretty good because the original Nintendo Switch came with 32 gigabytes, this is apparently coming with 64, so we're getting double the memory, like this is definitely a good thing, right? Well, if you didn't know, the original Nintendo Switch came with 32 gigabytes, but the OLED model revision, which came out in 2021, actually came with 64 gigabytes of memory on board, so this is actually not an improvement at all if we're going from the OLED model, which is definitely pretty disappointing. Games are only going to get bigger too as technology increases. We've already seen with like Xenoblade Chronicles 3 being 14 gigabytes, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom being 18 gigabytes, and now moving on to the Nintendo Switch 2, where there's going to be even more power and more capabilities, you're going to be getting like 20 gigabyte open world games and 22 gigabyte games, and just having 64 gigabytes of storage, that's going to fill up really fast, especially after hearing that there's going to be Call of Duty games coming to the next Nintendo system as well. Call of Duty games are notoriously bad for having like no optimized at all, and they're like 80 gigabyte, 90 gigabyte games, so they're going to be filling up really fast, and 64 gigabytes is just not going to be enough to be able to have these types of games. And I know a lot of people are just going to say, well, you can just buy an SD card and expand the storage that way, and I'm sure that's true and all, but keep in mind that we're going to be having the system lasting all the way up until like 2030, 2031 most likely, for the entire next generation, so I don't know if I would really want to have 64 gigabytes be like the default storage that it comes with. I was really hoping that there would be some more. This next one is the big one that everyone is talking about, and it has to do with the RAM, as the article is saying that the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to come with 8GB of RAM. So this is an improvement from the current Nintendo Switch, which only has 4GB, but I feel like it would definitely be less than what a lot of people are expecting. So for comparison with some of the other more powerful handheld gaming systems that have come out after the Nintendo Switch, like the Steam Deck and the Asus ROG Ally, all of these have 16GB of RAM, and that's pretty much what a lot of people were hoping for with the Nintendo Switch 2, or at the very least having 12GB of RAM, as that was also another amount that was rumored. 8GB of RAM, while it is an improvement from the current Nintendo Switch, it's what mainly a lot of people are saying wouldn't be the best idea for the Nintendo Switch 2, as it wouldn't really give the developers the full potential to really do a lot with it, as usually with the RAM there's like a section of it that's allocated for the actual system and the system UI and things like that, and then it's really like a limited amount that developers have to mess around with, and that's why having more RAM would be better for being able to load textures and having to like call other resources and models and things faster, so it would definitely be better to have more RAM. And it's really when you start putting it into perspective that this system is going to be what we're going to have for the entire next generation of Nintendo, probably taking us up until like 2030, 2031, and that's really when you can start to see that this might become an issue, as even though people are saying right now that this system is going to be outdated from the start if it comes with only 8GB of RAM, and that's still pretty true, it's going to become much more of an issue in like 2029, 2030, when you're going to start to try to get these third-party games that are still going to try to come to the Nintendo Switch 2, as it's pretty much the issue that we're having right now with the current Nintendo Switch with its 4GB of RAM, as when it first came out in 2017, it was still getting some really good ports like The Witcher 3 and Doom Eternal and LA Noire and these other really nice third-party games. But if we're talking about big third-party games that are coming to the Switch now, you're not really getting any, and the ones that are coming are not really that well optimized, so it can definitely start to become an issue like later on, and I feel like that's kind of the thing where if it comes with 8GB of RAM, you're definitely going to see some really good third-party games at the start, but are we really going to have like really good third-party games that are well optimized still coming in 2029, 2030? As I don't really think so, and that's where I really feel like 16GB or 12GB would definitely help it. And then the final thing that we have here is about the actual display or the screen that's going to be on the Switch 2 tablet, as people are saying that apparently they've been hearing that the screen is going to be a 120Hz screen, meaning that the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to have support for up to 120 FPS. Now on paper this might sound really cool, but you really got to think about it, because if the next generation Nintendo system or the Switch 2 is really going to have 120 FPS support, how many games do you genuinely think are going to be 120 FPS on that system? I mean, we're talking about the Nintendo Switch, which can barely even run many games at 60 FPS, let alone 120, so I just feel like this would be so weird, especially with the limited RAM and also like the CPU and GPU that we're talking about here, as especially with even the chip that they're using, if they're really going to be prioritizing battery life, it seems like they're not going to be using as much of like the performance capabilities of this chip either, so having now 120 FPS support, it just seems so confusing. Like, I feel like at most you're probably going to get some shooter games, multiplayer games, maybe at 120 FPS, like Splatoon, Mario Kart, maybe some third-party games like Call of Duty, Fortnite, stuff like that, but you sure as hell are not going to be running a 3D Zelda game in 120 FPS, or a 3D Mario game, or the next Xenoblade game, or any other open adventure game, as that's not even possible even on the PS5. Like, you're not getting Final Fantasy VII Remake running in 120 FPS on the PS5, you're not getting any of these adventure games on there, so why would the next Nintendo system have 120 FPS support? Like, this is actually something that I'm actually very confused about, because I feel like that's one thing that nobody was really going in expecting either. Like, I was definitely thinking that the next system would have just 60 FPS support, as with the hybrid tablet-like system that it has, you're not really going to be pushing out 120 FPS, and then even if it has support for it, and if it's just like with the UI itself and like not actually with games, then why would you even go through the effort of having 120 Hz? So it just seems really confusing to me if this is actually what Nintendo is planning. And so to recap, I'm just going to go through all of these specs that were leaked, but then also discuss like my perfect Nintendo Switch and like what the specs that I would give it if I was the one who was able to decide it, and then just kind of give you guys a comparison with both of them side by side. So the Nintendo Switch 2 with its specs, according to this leaked information, is going to have significantly improved battery, is going to have an NVIDIA T239 chip, and is going to have 64GB of storage, 8GB of RAM, and a screen with a 120Hz refresh rate. But now, if I was the one who was deciding the Nintendo Switch 2 specs, I would give it decently improved battery instead of really prioritizing battery life and significantly improving it like what it seems like Nintendo might be doing. Still the same Nvidia T239 chip, as you can't change that, 256 gigabytes of storage, but if you can't have that, maybe at least 128 at the bare minimum. 500 gigabytes would be even better. 16 gigabytes of RAM, but if that's not possible, at least 12 gigabytes at the bare minimum, and then a 60 Hz refresh rate screen like what we have right now. Now, the pricing for this was also mentioned in the article, and they did talk about it being $400, which would make sense as well, as that's pretty much what everybody's been saying that the system would launch at. And really, the last thing that I just want to say is, whenever you're following the leaks and rumors and speculation for any tech-related product, whether it's for a new video game system or a new phone or a computer or a TV or anything, you always got to go in expecting reality to be a few notches lower than what the leaks and the rumors were saying, as that's pretty much what always happens. I don't think I've ever seen any tech-related product be exactly to the same level of what was leaked and rumored, or somehow even exceeding the expectations and being even better, as it's always just a little bit worse than what people were expecting. I mean, this happened with the current Nintendo Switch 2, as even when it was still called the NX and we had no idea what this system was going to be, there were reports and articles and things coming out in like 2015, 2016, saying that the Nintendo Switch, or the NX at the time, was going to be PS4 level, it was going to be really powerful, and we all know how that ended up being, where in reality, it seems like the Switch 2 is what's going to be more PS4 level, as the PS4 has 8 gigabytes of RAM, the Switch 2 apparently, according to this, is now going to have 8 gigabytes of RAM too, and that's definitely going to be a little bit disappointing, as a lot of the rumors and things that we've been hearing about were saying that it was going to be like PS4 Pro level, it was going to be Xbox Series S level, and I still feel like that realm of possibility is not really too far off, and I feel like it can happen. I know like the article saying that it was going to have games looking like they were on a PS5 or an Xbox Series X, that's definitely reaching too far. Like, you're definitely not going to get that on a Nintendo system, but I feel like a PS4 Pro level or an Xbox Series S level would be really perfect, and honestly the best sweet spot for the next generation Nintendo system to really take us up until like 2030, 2031. So to now really think that it could be a couple notches even lower than that and getting like a PS4 level if these specs turn out to be true, it could definitely be a little bit disappointing. So personally, I'm actually just really hoping that these leaked specs are not real and that they're actually far off and we're going to be getting something better. So I'm really hoping that this is all just fake. But yeah, these are pretty much the leaked Nintendo Switch 2 specs that everybody's been talking about for the last day or so. So I figured I would just talk about it and share my thoughts as well. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed the video, definitely be sure to click that like button and also subscribe to the channel as well, as I'm definitely going to have some more Switch 2 videos in the future. So definitely be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on that. Comment down below and let me know what you guys think about this. How would you guys feel if these are actually going to be the real specs for the next Nintendo system? As I'm not really a huge fan of them. It honestly feels more like a Nintendo Switch Pro rather than an actual next generational leap from the Nintendo Switch. So I'd actually be pretty disappointed if this turns out to be real, but let me know what you guys think about this down below as well. But if you don't have anything to say, just comment your favorite emoji for some engagement. I would really appreciate it. Go follow me on Twitter at Aero so you can be featured in videos, and also join my Discord server as well. We've got a bunch of people in there who are always talking about Pokemon and Smash Bros and Nintendo, so definitely be sure to join that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching.